Hello there, and welcome to episode 11 of the From a Certain Point of View podcast. I'm Josh,
I'm Adam.
and once again, we're excited to be bringing you Star Wars news, reviews, and points of view. And we're going to start just with our kind of warm up and what we've been watching and playing and doing in Star Wars this week. Adam, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, I saw Rise of Skywalker for a fourth time. Went with my mother, and she had a blast. And that's
That's
kind of
great.
reminds me of what we talked about last week. You saw it with your family, and
Mm-hmm.
those are the fans that we're reaching here. Or
Yeah,
that Star Wars is reaching. It still speaks to them. And my mom had an absolute blast watching this movie, and couldn't stop talking about it at dinner afterwards. And then she said she talked about it on the way home, and um, she rode home with my dad. They went and
Mm-hmm.
did something else. So, um, but yeah, just it's really refreshing to see that passion. So, and there
Definitely.
was
And
definitely passion there.
I think my mom had the same type of reaction. And I
Yeah.
think, for my mom, she was just so surprised that Star Wars is still going on, because, she remembers seeing it when she grew up at, one of the smaller theaters or whatever, and just the
Hmm.
impact it had. And that it's become my favorite movie, and, her son, and still going strong. So I think there's just that whole aspect of it too.
Yeah. And aside from that, I've been watching some Clone Wars. I'm up to season 4 on that now, and I started reading Last Shot, which is the Han and Lando novel.
Have you read that one before or no?
No, it's my first
Okay,
time
me
through.
neither. I haven't read that one.
Yeah, so I'm about 30% or somewhere in there.
Mhm.
So,
Nice.
and did some comics reading, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But
Mhm.
that's about it for me. How about you?
Well, I actually just got done watching season 3, episode 7 of the Clone Wars, and I really
Okay.
enjoyed this episode. In this episode, we see Ahsoka kind of has a vision of an assassination attempt on
Yeah,
Padme.
yeah.
They're going to Alderaan, and I really love this episode for a few reasons. I love the whole vision aspect of the Force, and kind of foreseeing things that are going to happen. And when they landed on Alderaan and they're playing the Leia theme, I literally got tears in my eyes. I think anytime I hear Leia's theme, that happens to me. But I thought it was just a beautiful shot, and with the music and everything. And then they also had the whole Aura Singh aspect of the show,
Hmm.
and that
Yeah.
kind of tied into that brief mention of the character in Solo, when we learned that Beckett actually killed Aura Singh. So I thought that was just, because when I saw Solo, I didn't really know what that reference was all about because I hadn't watched the Clone
Right.
Wars at that point. But now it's like, oh, now I get that. So I thought there was a lot of cool things about this episode that I really enjoyed. Um,
You're
and
getting
other
close
than
to Mortis. I think
Yeah,
you're
I'm
gonna
getting
love
there. Yeah.
Mortis. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to that.
Hmm.
Um, and I've also been playing a little bit of Fallen Order,
Okay.
and I think I'm almost like 75% through. Um,
Okay.
I got my lightsaber. I built my new lightsaber with the kyber crystal,
Okay.
and
So
I
you've
had to go with purple, just because.
I went with orange.
See, I had orange like up until this point, and I was like, I don't
Okay.
know if I want to keep orange. But then I was like, Mace Windu's purple lightsaber is so unique and one of my favorite colors, so I went with
Hmm.
purple, and I'm enjoying that.
Okay. Cool.
So I'm getting there with Fallen Order, and that's pretty much what I've been watching and playing in Star Wars this week.
Awesome. So this week on the show, we'll go through some news items that we have. There's a couple pretty exciting ones that we'd like to talk about. And reviews, we have a couple comics reviews. We're going to talk about both of the Rise of Kylo issues so far, since we haven't really talked about the first one at all yet. And then we have the new Star Wars #1 that we're going to talk about a little bit too. And points of view, we have a kind of a new thing going on that we just started this week, and we got some feedback from listeners, and we're gonna do. Uh, so the feedback was actually to go through some of our favorite like bad lip reading videos and some others, but we decided to expand that and do, kind of our favorite Star Wars parodies. Just any type of bad lip reading, anything else beyond that too. So with that, I think we can jump into news. What do you think, Josh?
All right, let's go to the news.
Well, you want the bad news or the really bad news?
Okay, so our first news article for this week comes from Star Wars Newsnet, and it is about the rumored Star Wars saga that might take place centuries before the Skywalker saga, approximately 400 years before. This broke from Making Star Wars, I believe.
Yeah.
Jason Ward is behind Making Star Wars.
Mhm.
And what do you think about this potential rumor, Adam?
I'm very excited for it for a lot of reasons. Uh, they're not calling this Old Republic; they're calling this the High Republic era.
High Republic, yeah.
And I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure what the difference is there. I would imagine the Old Republic would probably just go farther back in time, but I don't know what the cutoff is there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Old Republic goes back further, the High Republic, and I want to say the High Republic, from what I've heard, might be a time where the Jedi were kind of at their height, possibly. Um,
That's one of the things that was mentioned in there.
yeah, and we have the possibility of the rule of two,
Mhm.
with Darth Bane being established.
Yeah, and
Was one rumor that came out of that.
a younger Yoda, like a midlife Yoda.
Yeah, I'm thinking if this is true, if we get this, then we're gonna see Yoda again.
Yeah,
You know,
that would make sense.
right?
And probably a CGI version of him.
Probably, yeah. I mean,
Because you
if
would
he's
think
gonna
that he would
be,
be more active,
yeah, if he's gonna be
unless
doing some
he's
combat and stuff.
unless
So
he's like on a council role still, but I don't know.
yeah, that could be. I'd be curious to see what today's CGI could do with Yoda. You know,
Yeah,
because I mean, he looked decent during the prequels, but
right.
I imagine it would be even so much better now. You know,
Oh yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
so
I could see that. I mean, Maz Kanata was mostly CGI,
right, right
and
now.
I thought that looked perfectly fine. Not to
Oh
mention
yeah,
CGI human characters that we've been getting. So
definitely. So I think we're at a place now where that could be well executed.
yeah,
Um, what do you think about this possibly tying into Project
that's what
Luminous?
I wanted
And
to talk about.
yeah, go ahead.
I'm really excited for that. Like if so, Project Luminous is supposed to kick off in this year, and I imagine that it sounds like that's going to be tying in a lot of different types of mediums, like books and comics and even games
Right.
are mentioned there.
Yeah, because I mean, if we look at some of the list of authors, I mean, we've got Claudia Gray, who is personally my
Yeah.
favorite Star Wars author. We got Charles Soule, who writes comics, wrote the
Hmm.
Rise of Kylo Ren, wrote the Darth Vader series in comics. So we're seeing some
Cavan
authors
Scott,
there.
I'm actually kind of excited for too. He was behind the Dooku Jedi Lost audio production.
Oh, nice. Okay, I knew that name sounded familiar,
Yeah,
but
and
I
I
wasn't
just
sure.
listened to that 2 weeks ago. I think again that was my
Hmm.
second time through that, and that's just it's really well done. It's like a radio drama for Star
Yeah,
Wars.
I've listened to some of it. I
Yeah,
haven't finished it yet, but it's good.
yeah,
Now we don't know for sure if Project Luminous is connected to this or if this is even going to happen, but
right.
we're kind of trying to put the pieces together. Now, originally, I thought that Project Luminous might be like, you know how they did the whole A New Hope from a certain point of view book,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
where they did A New Hope just from other points of view, and a bunch of
yeah.
different authors were on it. Now, I thought this was going to be like the Empire Strikes Back version of that.
Okay.
This whole Project Luminous thing, because Yoda mentions luminous beings are we in Empire. Um, but maybe that's not what it is. Maybe it's tied into this new direction that Star Wars is going in, with
Yeah.
possibly this High Republic storyline.
When I first heard about Project Luminous, my hope was actually something like this. Uh,
Oh yeah, I think
and
that's
I
even better
was
than
see, I was
just doing
actually
another.
right, and I was actually thinking it would probably take place like post Rise of Skywalker.
Right. Yeah, I could see that.
But I was hoping for something like a large arc across a lot of different novels and a lot of different things that really kicks into some new lore and new you know meaningful canon events, I guess. And what I mean by that is, like, for the last few
I think
years,
I know.
yeah, for the last few years, I feel like in some of the canon novels and all this other stuff that we've gotten some smaller stories, but nothing that was really like no huge events, except for maybe Aftermath, which was kind of tied in the Battle of Jakku.
Right.
But nothing like major that really advanced a lot of story in the universe. And I was hoping that this would do that. And if this is correct, it sounds like it will.
Yeah, and I'm very excited about that idea too because like you said, I think we can see some big things take place in the novelizations or in the comics. I mean even just reading, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but reading the Rise of Kylo Ren, there's some big things for me that are happening in that. Things that I've been looking to see in medium other than the movies or the shows, you know what I mean?
Right,
Um
right.
so yeah, I think
Um,
this could definitely expand that.
Now, I wanted to read a little bit from this paragraph of the Star Wars Newsnet article.
Mhm.
So first of all, I'm a little confused here because it says Project Luminous officially starts in 2020, but the first effort released will be a new video game that releases in 2021. So I'm not
Right.
quite sure if that means that we're not getting anything from Project Luminous this year until the video game launches it next year, or if we're going to be getting some stuff in the meantime.
See, I feel like I mean, we'll get an announcement of Project Luminous relatively soon, and
Okay.
I'm thinking that we might get something, maybe a book or a comic in 2020 possibly.
Okay.
But I mean, I know how this is worded. It's a little
It's a little, yeah. I
it's
was
a little
confused by
confusing.
that. Now,
Yeah.
the
So
next
I'm
sentence is exciting. So the next sentence is overall, the approach to Project Luminous line will be more welcoming to interconnected storytelling reminiscent of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU,
right.
rather than the standalone nature of the previous spin-offs.
Yeah, I think this is really good news actually. And
Right.
I've said it before. I know Star Wars isn't the same as Marvel, and you can't just necessarily spit out 2 to 3 Star Wars movies a year like you can with Marvel.
Right.
What Marvel has done, in my opinion, was nearly perfectly executed. Um, if they can even duplicate that just a little bit with Star Wars, with having interconnected stories, talking about a series of films, a series of novels and things that are all connected and that lead to like this kind of final big event movie,
Right.
like
Right.
Endgame. I think that would be great. And I mean, we know that they've been talking to Kevin Feige and everything, and maybe he's given them some insight into how they can, and maybe he'll be producing one of these films in this series.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Um, so I'm definitely excited about that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. Same for me.
hmm And I think there was one other point I wanted to
Yeah.
mention with this. Just the idea that maybe this was the project that Benioff and Weiss were kind of working on, but
Right.
now they're going to just continue it, and with some different people involved.
So that's what I thought was going to happen. When Benioff and Weiss we got those we got those reports that they were working on something like this.
hmm
I kind of just got the feeling they would just find a new director and just keep moving forward, and it maybe sounds like that's what's going to happen.
Right. And I got to say, this is what I've been wanting from Star Wars for a while. That going back in time, looking at the height of the Jedi, the rule of two, with the Sith, and being a big threat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and I've said before, Attack of the Clones, even though it's near the bottom of my list, one of my favorite moments from that is in the kind of arena when all the Jedi are there and they all show up and get involved, and you see kind of the Jedi at kind of the height of, maybe not the height of their, um I don't want to say power because that's not how the Jedi would view it, um but
Yeah, yeah.
just
Well,
having a
I know what you
large
mean, though.
number of
But yeah.
Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm very excited to see something like that in the
Yeah,
near future.
yeah, for sure.
So are we ready to move on to our next news article?
Yep.
All right. So we're looking at the ILM visual effects team providing some answers to lingering questions from the Rise of Skywalker. Um, one of those being that the flashback scene with Leia and Luke training, um, it was Billie Lourd, Carrie Fisher's daughter, who was actually portraying Leia in that scene.
Right.
Any thoughts about that, Adam?
I kind of wish that they would have just went with Billy Lord and not done any of the CGI tweaking to that.
Yeah, because
She
I mean,
already
they
kind of looks
definitely.
like her mother,
Yeah, yeah.
and I think because you're only getting that little part of her face, I think that would
Hmm.
have been very believable just to go with that. But
Yeah, I hear you there.
yeah,
Yeah. Um,
but I mean,
no,
that's a really beautiful emotional connection, and
it is beautiful, and it's
for
it's so
me,
fitting.
it's almost just as beautiful as her helping her mother to her deathbed, I guess, in the
Yeah.
film, and uh, can't talk too much about it without getting choked up, I guess. But
I hear you. I mean, I again just love all the Leia stuff in the Rise of Skywalker, and how I don't think there's a better way to for her character to get you know to have the send off that she did. I think was beautiful.
right.
Um, we also learn about some other things from ILM here about things that maybe we expected that maybe were in the movie but weren't and really were never filmed. So one of those is there was never a scene that was filmed with Ben Solo appearing as a Force ghost to Rey at the end of the film.
Yeah.
Um, any thoughts about that?
Puts a lot of rumors to rest, I guess. Or
Yeah.
but I mean, I'm okay with it.
Now, I will say that I was kind of hope because of the connection that Ray and Ben had. I was kind of hoping to see Ben appear to her as a Force ghost. I'm not disappointed that we didn't get that. Because I think the way they do it, just with Leia and Luke being there, is maybe even more poignant.
Yeah,
But
and that was kind of the reason that was given. Was that moment was kind of reserved for the twins,
right,
and
which
I
I
get
think
that.
is because you have her burying their two lightsabers. They're
Yeah.
on Tatooine. It's Luke and Leia. It's you know obviously she can't go to Alderaan and bury a saber because it's no more. So
Right.
having that done on Tatooine, I think was in the way they did it was great. So I don't have any complaints.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
but I think one character that maybe people might have felt was missing was Anakin Skywalker, and we do hear him in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't see him. There were some rumors going around that Anakin would appear as a Force ghost, but he doesn't. And I think the scene where that would have come into play was on the Death Star remains, and instead we get Han, which again is my favorite moment in the movie. So I don't think I would have rather seen Anakin there. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Um,
I was really banking for an Anakin appearance, but I'm okay with what we got.
right. Um, And then we also learned from this article that the fireball from Resistance
Mm-hmm.
is there. Um, I'm not sure exactly which ship the fireball is. Do you know? Have you looked into that at all or anything?
I honestly have still not watched Resistance, so I couldn't tell you.
Right, right. So I guess the fireball, one of the ships from Resistance, is seen in the final battle, and then
Mm-hmm.
kind of I think the last thing that we learned from this article from ILM is that there wasn't a whole lot more that was actually filmed with Palpatine. Um, he kind of says, I'm trying to, I'm not sure who was quoted here, but he says, I don't think there's anything you haven't really seen. JJ would always shoot variations on scenes. That's the natural movie making process, with angles and lighting changes and stuff. But he's saying there's not a lot that
Yeah.
we haven't really seen. Now,
That was
um,
from Marianne Brandon. That was
okay,
she's an editor on the movie.
thank you for helping me out with that
Yeah,
detail.
yeah.
So of course, there's this whole thing going around that there's this J.J. Abrams cut of the Rise of Skywalker that we're gonna
Hmm.
see at some point, or that we haven't seen. And personally, I think it's a bunch of McClunky. But what do you think, Adam?
I think at most that we would ever see is an extended version. I don't think that
Hmm.
there's an alternate JJ ending. I don't think that that the Ben dying ending. I don't think that we're ever going to see a movie that ever contradicts that.
Right.
I have other thoughts about that, but I don't think that we're ever going to see a version of Rise of Skywalker that takes that back or reverses that decision. So I think the most that we would ever see would be an extended version, a la like Endgame, or this has been done before. This type of thing, you get extra scenes, you get a few extra minutes that kind of just gives them a little more time to flesh out some of the plot points that had to be rushed a little bit just because of the nature of this movie.
Sure.
So I think that at most that's what we would get. Now, some of the news that I saw was that an extended version would be announced this week, which it obviously was not, and that it would release at the end of January.
Right.
So my initial feeling on that was I could understand an extended cut coming, and I'd be okay with it, and I would definitely go see it.
Yeah, it'd give me another great reason to go see the movie again, so I'd be interested.
Right. However, I honestly thought that it was just, like you said, a load of McClunky, and the fact that this week has come and gone with no announcement, like those leaks had said,
right?
I think it was. I think that's what it was.
Pretty much, and I think we'll get a few deleted scenes on the Blu-ray, just like we do with mostly any other movie. But I just think that people are going a little bit overboard with this whole thing.
Oh, of course.
But yeah, so that's our news for this week, unless you had anything, Adam, that I wasn't aware of.
Nope, I'm ready to talk some comics.
All right, let's jump into our review segment of the show.
My disappointment in your performance cannot be overstated.
This week for reviews, we're going to dive into 3 different comics. We're going to do both issues of The Rise of Kylo Ren so far, and we're going to check out the new Star Wars #1, which just kicked off this about 2 weeks ago. So starting with the first issue of The Rise of Kylo Ren. At a high level, Josh, what did you think of this issue?
I mean, I've loved both issues so far. I think this is some of my favorite comic book reading here. I mean, I don't read a lot of comics, I will admit. So only the ones that I'm really most interested in will I read. And I was very interested in this, and I've really enjoyed it so far, and getting kind of more of a look at the Knights of Ren, because I've always been really interested in the Knights of Ren, and we don't get a lot of them, or as much as them as I'd hoped in Rise of Skywalker. So getting to learn a little bit more about them and where they came from, and what their kind of ideology is and everything, and I've enjoyed it so far.
Yeah, and I kind of want to just touch on the high points of this. It kicks off on a nice planet with the Knights of Ren doing battle, and they come across these 2. I don't want to say recruits, but there's 2 that they're trying to sway to join them, and they ask their brothers. These two individuals are brothers, and they are kind of trying to persuade the first brother, and just out of nowhere, the second brother kills his brother and says that he wants to join. But they just say that he's actually not dark enough, and they just kill him.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Like, I thought if anything, that would be enough to get recruited with killing your brother.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of surprising.
So, and then we find out that they're actually one guy short, which, they say their master will find them someone else. So that's going to be our story arc here.
Right.
But then we jump to the Jedi Temple, and this is the scene of the night where Luke attempts to kill Ben. Kind of the extended cut of what we saw in The Last Jedi. So we start off with the actual the temple burning, and Ben looking at it from the outside. And then we join a group of 3. There's a Corrin and 2 humans that are coming back to the temple, and it seems like they're possibly masters or maybe just like high-ranking knights or something. If those designations are carrying over, I guess.
Right,
Yeah,
and
but
I thought it was interesting to take this angle on it because it makes sense that maybe not all of Luke's Padawans or trainees would be there. There might be a few that were
right.
away in a different part of the galaxy, and just I thought that was pretty neat to introduce that idea to the story.
Yes, yeah. So they are returning, and they confront Ben as he's leaving, and Ben tells them that Luke is dead. That he attacked. Luke attacked him, and he tells him he's dead. The I don't know if I want to call them teachers or what I want to call them, but the three that confront him really don't believe that. The interesting thing I think that I pulled out of this, and then they actually kind of go through a little confrontation there, where the three teachers or masters pull out their lightsabers, and they actually also begin to attack Ben, which he didn't ask for.
No,
he didn't initiate that fight, which I found interesting. Also, it's almost like he hasn't fallen here yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think this whole issue gives us just a whole different angle on Ben Solo.
And he actually gives them multiple chances to stand down from this without, lethal force or anything like that. Before he's almost finally forced to do something he doesn't want to do,
Right.
Which, again, I found very interesting as far as his character goes. That this is a path that he felt he was forced into.
Right, because, I mean, just, watching The Last Jedi and in the whole sequel trilogy, we have our idea in our mind of how this whole thing went down, and this isn't the way that I imagined it went down. I imagined Ben being the more active force in making this turn, and everything, and destroying the temple and everything.
Right. So Ben leaves in his ship, and then the three masters or teachers kind of follow him in pursuit. But he pulls a little move and kind of disables their ship. And there's a couple panels then where we see that he's actually speaking to Snoke through a force connection almost.
Yeah.
And then we kind of see a flashback again. This goes back to before the temple was burning, and we see the scene from The Last Jedi where Luke is attempting to end him, and then we actually see that he's really remorseful about this. He asks why 3 times. Why would Luke do that? And then he actually leaves. And he does not burn down the temple.
No. Yeah, this was the biggest shocker to me.
Right.
So, I don't know. Was that like some kind of force lightning or something like that ignited that fire? Or what was that?
It almost looks like it. I mean,
yeah.
You see him moving away, and then he kind of turns back and looks at the temple, and the temple starts to glow red, and then in the next page, the temple explodes, and you see lightning coming down from the sky. I don't know.
So you have to wonder who or where that came from.
Right. And then we get, we get another few panels with the three masters. They kind of strengthen their resolve to put an end to this. But then it kind of ends with Ben retreating to Snoke. And Snoke is on this very interesting space station / planet.
Yeah, whatever it is, it's definitely interesting.
It's like a garden planet, right?
Sort of like a paradise type almost, but
right.
But we know that there's something else kind of going on there.
Right. But Ben runs to Snoke, and Snoke welcomes him with open arms, of course. Seems very welcoming towards him. But we find out that Snoke's scars on his face were actually from Luke. which I thought was interesting as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So it kind of makes me wonder if we're going to see what happened there in any additional
Yeah, I hope
detail.
we do.
Right. And then we find out that Ben says that he's been thinking of joining the Knights of Ren, and that's how the issue ends.
Yep.
So moving on to the second issue, it kind of picks up in the same place that this one left off. So we're back on that garden planet, whatever, of Snoke's. So, again, let's take a step back here. So first of all, if you haven't read this yet, we're going to be spoiling the issue. We're going to be talking about it in depth, so that, skip ahead a few minutes here if you have not read this yet and want to keep the surprises. But Josh, what did you think of this issue overall?
I think I liked this one even more than
I think so too.
The first. There's a lot of things I really loved about this issue. Especially involving a character like Lor Santeca, which I always wanted to know a little bit more about him. How did he know Ben? How did he know Luke? We get a little bit of that here. I think also just seeing when Luke confronts the Knights of Ren, this is what I wanted to see in The Last Jedi. I was hoping that the Knights would show up on Octo and face off with Rey and Luke or something like that, and we would see Luke take them on, and we didn't get that, so we kind of get that here in a way, and I definitely loved that about it too.
Right. So it gets some interesting backstory about, well, not really backstory even, but hints about the planet that they're on. Snoke asked him what he thinks about this, what Ben thinks about this place, and he says that the people who built it were trying to hold back the dark, but that it didn't work. And we see that, amongst all of the flora, there's a lot of decay, and in the midst of the decay, there's a lot of bones and skeletons and things like that. So the dark is kind of pushing back through all of this garden that he's surrounded by. And then we start. Ben starts asking about the Knights of Ren again. He says he thinks he can learn from them, and Snoke kind of makes the point that Ben Solo, Jedi to be, is not a name for a Knight of Ren, and Ben says that he hates his name anyway.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really interesting point. That he was like, I'm named after Obi-Wan Kenobi. I didn't even know that guy, and everybody expects me to be him. And of course, being named Solo, and like Solo wasn't even my dad's real name. Like he's a fake, basically. Right. So just, and I think it's all about just this inevitability. I mean, even thinking about the planet or whatever it is, that the light is trying to suppress the dark, but I think there's this theme in the Rise of Skywalker that talks about this. Kylo Ren has this feeling that there's just this inevitability of him being a part of the dark side because of where he came from, coming from Darth Vader. And he believes Rey has that same inevitability to go to the dark because of the Palpatine lineage. But in actuality, it's all about choices. It's all about the choices that you make. There isn't necessarily an inevitability because of, where you came from. It's all about, the family you choose, the choices that you make. So I think Ben's been hearing this message of inevitability from Snoke, that like even the dark will take over the light on this planet because you're just trying to suppress the dark. But really the truth is that, you can make a choice. So I love that, and that's kind of what I pulled out of that,
And then building on that, Snoke asks what Ben's name will be, and I found this interesting, that Snoke says, "I was not born Snoke, I became Snoke."
Yeah, that was very interesting. So like, what was his name before?
He asked Ben what he will become, and he says he can see it in his mind. And Ben says that he has this name of something he thought of when he was a child. And Snoke says that that's why that name is correct for you.
Right.
I wonder if that name would be Kylo.
Kylo. So what
yeah.
does Kylo mean? Why does
Right.
he have that name in his mind? I was very curious about that.
Right. So then Snoke sends him on a mission to find the Knights of Ren, and he says that you will join them at that point, or you will die. Very Palpatine-esque.
Yeah, it seems like there's a definite major initiation that takes place to join the Knights of Ren, and you really have to do something. And I believe what he's going to do is kill the current leader,
Right.
Of the Knights of Ren and become the leader.
So he says to find them, basically start at the last place you saw them. And that kind of launches into what this issue is. So we go into a flashback. Luke, Ben, and finally Lor San Tekka.
Yes.
Is a character that we saw at the very beginning of The Force Awakens. He was the old man that Kylo Ren kills, that hands off the piece of the map for the resistance to find Luke. We finally see him doing something new.
Yeah.
And they are on their way to a Jedi temple. And
looks like they're looking for maybe some Jedi artifacts. Or
Jedi
like
artifacts,
that.
And they actually find a huge library of all kinds of things, and one of them being a holocron.
It looked like there was like some kind of maybe a holocron in there or something. And some other stuff.
Right. And then Luke and Ben both sense something cold, they say. And it happens to be the Knights of Ren who are there also looking for the same things.
Right.
So we get a showdown here, Luke versus the Knights of Ren. A lot of Last Jedi callbacks here in this battle. Both with the way that Luke is kind of holding his lightsaber and getting ready for
the way
battle.
he fights,
even the way he
kind of dodges.
Yeah, he's even more. That Luke at the end of the projection Luke. It's very reminiscent of that.
Yeah, and I think that reminded me of the fact that's why I think in Rise of Skywalker I wanted his Force Ghost to look like that, just because I feel like that's the true Luke. You know what I mean? So I was kind of surprised that they made him look how he did in Rise of Skywalker, but that's just one of my minor nitpicks.
So the Knights of Ren, we find out, are Force sensitive, which we knew that from the visual dictionary that I've been reading. But they are Force sensitive, but untrained. And Luke says that they wield the dark side like a hammer.
Right.
Very untrained, very.
And it's not a hammer;
forceful.
It's a blade.
Yeah. They end basically retreating. The leader, the Knights of Ren, takes his helmet off, and we kind of see him under the helmet. And this is not a Knight of Ren that shows up in the movie. So, like you said, he could possibly not survive this arc.
Right.
But he takes his helmet off, and it's a white and gray-haired individual. And he leaves his helmet there.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
And he says,
I think it was kind of
come
an
back
invitation.
and find us. It's an invitation, and he leaves it there for years. Because after that, since that was the last place that Ben saw them, Ben travels there and finds the helmet again, and puts it on.
Puts it on, yeah.
And then he meets up with the three masters or teachers again. That's where we leave. Leave off there.
So yeah, I thought this was a great issue, very compelling. A lot of stuff that I've been wanting to see for a while, and I'm loving this so far.
Right. Yeah, same here. I'm very much looking forward to issue 3. This has been a really good arc, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So Star Wars #1. Did you get a chance to read this?
I have not read this yet, so I'm going to rely on you to do this review.
Okay, so this kicks off immediately after Empire. This is going to be between Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Okay, I think that there could be some interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, so I think you would enjoy that. But it starts it starts with Luke kind of reliving the events of the end of Empire in his mind. He's actually on the Falcon and with Leia, Chewie, and Lando. And he's actually kind of going back through his mind. You see his arm, his hand, and kind of the after events of that. And he's playing these quotes from Vader back in his head. About I am your father.
Yeah.
Don't make me destroy you. Join me.
Mm-hmm.
I am your father. We can rule a galaxy, father and son. You just kind of see these quotes playing back over and over in his head. And he's and this is actually even before he gets his hand fixed.
Okay.
So
this is
like I say, like immediately after Empire,
immediately
but it's
after,
really not because he doesn't
Right.
have that. So it's kind of on the way to that.
It's kind of like immediately after his confrontation with Vader.
Yeah, so it's basically immediately after leaving Cloud City. They start discussing that they can actually still save Han. That's kind of the point of discussion aboard the Falcon. That Lando believes that they could have saved them, but they had to turn around to save Luke. So there's a lot of disagreements there about what they should have actually done. Between pursuing Boba Fett or actually having turned around to save Luke. Leia, of course, is adamant about her decision, to go back. But they actually end up running into on the way. They end up running into an Imperial fleet. They decide that their best bet is to regroup with the rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but like I said, along the way, they do meet up with the rebellion, but the rebellion's actually engaged with a couple Star Destroyers and TIE Fighters and everything like that. So, we get a lot of pages here with space battle, and one of the interesting things that we do meet up with is Poe Dameron's father.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So we do get to see him in his role with the rebellion there, and he actually talks about his wife Shara Ray, and he calls her his son mother. That was different, but hey, whatever. So the Falcon kind of swoops in here to save the day, and Luke gets on the in the gunner position, and they're being chased by a ton of TIE fighters, and Luke actually kind of uses the Force to swerve one of these TIE fighters into another, kind of wreck the whole thing so they can escape.
That's cool.
But again, you see some flashbacks here. Luke thinking about Ben, saying that Darth Vader betrayed and murdered your father. But then, you see in the very next panel, Vader saying, "I am your father," and he's still very much struggling with this.
Sure. Yeah, trying to reconcile that what Ben told him compared to what the potential truth he's being told by the villain in the galaxy.
Right. So the Falcon makes an attack run on one of the destroyers there, and does a lot of damage. So the Empire, basically has to kind of back off, and the Rebellion can escape. The next scene is with Vader and a hologram of the Admiral, I believe. Of that destroyer, kind of reporting to Vader that they lost them. Vader actually kind of tells them that the Falcon is off limits to them, because they said that they actually did attempt to destroy the Falcon. Vader says that he's aware that it's often piloted by Leia and Organa, but he also says that there's someone else that pilots that ship, and he wants him alive. So Luke is the only reason why the Falcon is kind of put off limits from Vader.
Right.
So the Rebellion makes it to a backup rendezvous point called Point Gamma 9. And they're kind of talking about their next steps here, what they need to do. And they're finding out that the Imperials are able to track them, break their communications, break their codes, kind of know very sequel trilogy idea, I guess.
Yeah.
And they find out actually that, again, a very Last Jedi thing, that the people aboard, or the people at this rendezvous point, might be the very last of the rebellion, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then we end with a scene with Luke. Luke and R2 are in kind of a secluded area of the ship. And Luke is kind of going through kind of an identity crisis, I guess. Because he's saying, you know, this is him being defeated. He says, I don't know what to do. I still feel the Force, but I've lost my lightsaber. I lost a lot of things.
Right.
And he's asking Yoda for help, actually. And he's saying, he says, why won't you answer me? Kind of you know, a very Rey moment also.
Yeah.
And then he, like I said, this is kind of a identity crisis thing for him, because he's saying that, you know, he's not a Jedi yet. Yoda made that clear.
Yeah, he's not a Jedi yet.
Right. And then he says, if Vader is my father, there's no way that Yoda couldn't have known. And he said, you know, Yoda and Ben wouldn't have known. So he knows at this point that they knew.
Yeah.
He said that you know, they lied to me, and that's bad enough. But the thing is, he says the thing that he's worried about here, if he's not going to be a Jedi, what is he going to be? And that's how it moves off.
Right. Nice. Well, I will definitely have to check that out and start reading that one.
Yeah, you should check it out.
Sounds like there's some good stuff in there. And you know, I think one thing that always resonated with me at the end of Empire Strikes Back was Luke just repeatedly asking, like, Ben, why didn't you tell me? You know?
Yeah, and you see very much that he's struggling with that in this issue.
Yeah, so I think that this will kind of expand upon that moment in the film.
Right, and this really deals with Luke's failure, and you know, this is. You know, I keep saying that there's callbacks in here to the films, and there are. So some of those themes, you know, that make The Last Jedi what it is, are in this movie as well. In this issue as well. So I think you'd really enjoy this, and you know, knowing how much you love, you know, both The Last Jedi and Empire Strikes Back, there's a lot of good crossover here between both of those. So,
well, you definitely sold me, because those are two of my very favorite Star Wars films.
I know.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to check it out.
Okay, you ready for points of view?
I am.
Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
We mentioned in the opening that we're doing something new this week, and once again, we'll cover that as you know, a second time here. But we really want to hear from you, from the listeners. We want to know what you guys want to hear too. So we've had a lot to talk about here, leading up to the Rise of Skywalker and, you know, the Mandalorian and all that stuff. And not that we don't have things to talk about now, because there's always Star Wars stuff to talk about. But this is kind of the opportunity, I think, you know, for us to really talk about what listeners want to hear about, right?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this going forward. I think our points of view segment can definitely be a segment that lends itself to getting our audience involved, which I'm very excited about. Yeah,
so we've put out a couple tweets this week and a couple Facebook posts, and you know, check out the website, because the website has some details here. So make sure that you're following us on Twitter. Make sure that you're following us on Facebook, you know, part of the following the page. And then even in the Discord server, we started talking to some of our Discord friends and getting some feedback from them, and we'll be sharing some of those conversations here pretty soon. You know, make sure you're connecting with us, and then you know, we also have an email address now that you can use. That's on the website as well. But that's certain POV pod, all one word, certain POV pod at gmail.com. So get in touch with us there.
Feel free to submit any questions that you have that you'd like us to answer on the show, or any topic ideas that you'd like us to cover through the email, or any of those other ways to connect with us. So we would appreciate it.
And we've actually got a few topics already from some listeners that I think we can cover the next week or two here at least. Yeah, but like Josh said, if you have any questions that you'd like us to answer, and don't think that your question's too basic either.
No,
We
absolutely.
want
And
the show to,
no
yeah,
question is a bad question, as
we
they
want the
say.
show to be for everybody. And if you're just starting
Right.
out in Star Wars, ask us. What are you confused about? Let us help you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
we want this to
Yeah.
be for everybody.
One of my favorite things to do actually is when I'm watching the Star Wars movies, whether it's Brit, my wife, or anybody that maybe isn't as deep into it as I am, and I love answering their questions.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I just love doing that. So I'm always up for that.
Yeah, so any questions that you guys have, Josh said any show topic ideas, and you'd like us to go take a deep dive into something, let us know. Even if you'd like to just, even write a guest blog post or anything you can
Mm-hmm.
think of that you'd like to be involved in, and if you'd like to be on the show to do that, then, let us know that too. We're always
Absolutely.
open to that as well. So, but the one, so, our friend Steve sent this suggestion to us on Twitter, and I mentioned before, but the suggestion was actually to kind of cover some of our favorite. He mentioned specifically bad lip reading videos,
Mm-hmm.
which are YouTube videos put out by a channel called Bad Lip Reading, and they kind of take the video from the movies, but shut off the audio, and then do incorrect lip readings from the scenes, and it turns out really funny. So they
Yeah.
do a lot of scenes and they do a lot of songs. And he also mentioned the pitch meeting from Screen Rant. But we
Mhm.
decided to kind of just expand this into just what are our favorite Star Wars parodies, because Star Wars as a medium is huge, and it lends itself pretty easily to just some fun fun kind of ribbing or poking fun at videos or songs. And the fun thing about these is that George Lucas is actually on board with some of these too. So, and he's actually taken part in some of these as well, that I'll mention here too. So,
Yeah, I think sometimes as a Star Wars fandom, we can, because we're so connected to Star Wars and it means so much to us, we can at times take it a little bit too seriously. So
mhm.
I think being able to poke fun at it and have fun with it is important. And honestly, I wouldn't have really thought of this topic if it wasn't for Steve,
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
I think
same.
it's going to be a lot of fun to get into this.
Yeah. So, you want to go ahead and kick off? Do you have one to start us off here?
Yeah, I guess I want to preface this by saying I don't often think about Star Wars parodies. And there's a specific reason for that. So for me, it was kind of a challenge to go back and remember. And Adam, you helped me a little bit with
Yeah.
thinking of some parodies that I didn't think of. But um, I'm gonna go all the way back to 2005, and
Okay.
there was a Revenge of the Sith parody done by Jimmy Fallon, and I think it was maybe on the MTV Movie Awards that year. And
Okay.
and Jimmy Fallon officially ruined Star Wars parodies for me because what happened is, and I don't know if you remember this one or not, but there's a part. It's the scene where Padme is confronting Anakin on Mustafar, and
Okay.
then Obi-Wan shows up, and Jimmy Fallon is playing the part of Anakin and just intercutting all the real scenes that are in that, all the real shots that are in that scene.
Okay.
But there's a point where Obi-Wan starts walking down, kind of the ramp off of the ship, and they're confronting each other, and Anakin says something about "you got barbecue sauce on my bathrobe," and Anik and Obi-Wan, of course, says, "You have done that yourself." And
I see you got barbecue sauce on my bathrobe.
You have done that yourself.
when I saw that, it was funny and I laughed.
Yeah.
But now every time I watch Revenge of the Sith from that point on, all I could think about was that parody where
Yeah.
Obi-Wan
That'll happen. Yeah.
saying, "You have done that yourself," and I'm thinking about barbecue sauce. So since then, I've pretty much stayed away from Star Wars parodies, but I do
That's
have a
funny.
few. Yeah, and I watched a lot of bad lip reading in the
Okay.
last couple days, and one that I have in mind that's my favorite Star Wars parody that I'll
Okay,
get
well, I'll
into.
just
So
mention. I'll just get
yeah.
my bad lip reading one out of the way. Then I love Bushes of Love. and I don't know if you that was one of the songs, and that came out of the A New Hope bad lip reading.
Okay. I don't
So-
think I've seen that one.
Okay, so this is it's mainly kind of the beginning scenes of A New Hope, where Luke and Ben and Ben finally meet up,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of go through the whole thing. And so it starts off with Luke asking how his dad died, and Ben starts into this song, and we know what Ben actually says, but with the way, like I mentioned before, with the way bad lip reading works, is that they take the same scenes, but they put different dialogue over top of it that still matches up with what the characters' lips, how their lips are moving.
Right.
So it's a lip reading, but it's all done incorrectly. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Ben, and it goes through the whole song like this, but Ben ends up saying that they met up with a creature with a chicken head and duck feet and a woman's face. And Luke says that's rad. But then Ben says he ripped off your dad's face.
Okay, right.
He said he was screaming something awful, and he had said he had to change the floors. And then Luke says the floors, and Ben says there was basically just so much blood that it leaked into the boards, and he had to change all the boards
right
of the floor. And this song is like 3 more minutes of this stuff, and it just cracks me up every single time.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, but Luke almost ends up going into a rap at one point, and Luke's kind of this like whiny kid that even does a little bit of a rap sequence and stuff. It's really funny. So that's my favorite bad lip reading.
Awesome. As far as bad lip reading goes, I love the Empire Strikes Back. Seagulls.
Seagulls is a classic. We have to mention Seagulls because that's everywhere.
Yeah, I love that one.
If you think of a bad lip reading, the Star Wars, it's always gonna, the main one's always gonna be the Seagulls.
Yeah, that one's a standout. But I really fell in love with Force Awakens bad lip reading, which I watched for the first time yesterday, because Mark Hamill actually voices Han. In it, which is great. And there's a scene where specifically that made me laugh out loud, where Finn and Han are on Starkiller base, and they're kind of looking down, and Han's kind of asking, like, who's down there, what's going on down there, and Finn says ninjas. and Han says, did you say ninjas? They have karate that can snap your shins clean. and hopefully, Adam, you can get like a clip of that to play. But
I'll get it.
What do we got there?
Ninjas.
Did you say ninja?
Yeah?
They have karate and can snap your shins clean.
Serious? I'm scared now, right?
They'll pluck out our eyelids.
Wait, could you still fall asleep?
How were those your first words?
I doubt you could.
Oh, really? No?
It's just so hilarious, the way that he says it, knowing that it's Mark Hamill, and they just go on about this whole karate thing and ninjas thing, and it just cracks me up. So that's my favorite bad lip reading.
I was watching this morning. Have you ever watched Phineas and Ferb?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so Phineas and Ferb is a show that I think is far funnier than it has any right to be. It's a really fun show. It was an animated show that was on Disney XD, I want to say, or maybe just Disney Channel proper. I'm not sure.
one of those Disney channels. Yeah.
But I think it was Disney XD, and so the whole premise of the show, I guess, is that it takes place over summer vacation, and these two kids, Phineas and Ferb, just get into these crazy situations. But they also have a pet platypus named Perry, and Perry is actually a secret agent, and he gets into all these side missions against an evil Dr. Doofenshmirtz. So there's always in these episodes these two different arcs going on with Phineas and Ferb, and then what Perry's up to. But they have done. There was actually 2 episodes, and they're in season 4. They're both on Disney Plus if you want to watch them. But they did a New Hope parody, and it was all just like I said. It's silly. Some of it is really funny. There's actually some decent music in it too, decent songs.
Right.
But I was watching that this morning again. It's been years since I've watched it actually, and I was laughing again. So it's really fun. If you have Disney Plus, it's season 4 somewhere in there, but it's the Phineas and Ferb Star Wars mashup.
Nice. I'll have to check that out. I don't know if you mentioned Robot Chicken at all.
I haven't yet, but
go
for it because I was watching that this morning too.
Yeah, I mean, I it's been a while since, but I just remember that being one of my favorite parodies that I just wanted to mention briefly.
Yeah, and that's one of those
Robot Chicken I enjoyed.
Yeah, because George Lucas lended his voice to some of that also.
And
like we said, like I said earlier, George is signing off on some of this stuff, and like Josh had mentioned, this isn't. When we're poking fun at this stuff, we can do it in good fun and just have a laugh. And I love to see that George was participating in that as well.
For sure, because then it makes you feel like, oh, the creator of Star Wars is okay with this stuff, so I can be too.
Yeah. But Robot Chicken is more like a what do I want to call it? It's stop motion.
Yeah,
and it's almost more like sketch comedy type thing.
Right.
So I guess think of these like really short, like Saturday Night Live type skits.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just off the wall stuff. So it's just reimagining Star Wars, and this is like one that I was watching this morning. It was from episode 1, and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are cutting into the
bridge, the blast door thing,
the bridge.
Okay.
The blast door of the bridge on that where they open on Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
And Qui-Gon hands the lightsaber back to Obi-Wan and says, "Hold this," but he drops it, and it just falls through the floors, and you hear everyone down below. Goes, What's going? What is that? What is it? It's a lightsaber, and it keeps going. And
it's almost open. Hold on to this.
You mentioned SNL, so that brings me actually to my favorite Star Wars parody, which is Undercover Boss, Starkiller Base.
Nice. I didn't even think of that
Adam
one.
Driver, Matt the Radar Tech guy.
Yeah.
And oh my God, does this make me laugh so hard? I think Adam Driver just does such a good job of not only playing like this angry version of Kylo Ren, but then playing this Matt the Radar Tech guy who's undercover. Everybody and all the characters are catching on that this is actually Kylo Ren, and he's really not fooling anybody. And he just gets progressively more and more mad as the sketch goes along, and like at the end he's kind of like, guess what, guys, I'm Kylo Ren, and the one officer's like, yeah, I literally knew since you said hi, I'm mad, or something like that. But I love it. I think Adam Driver is a brilliant actor, and I think that he plays the comedy really well in that. So that's my favorite.
That's one that I didn't even think about, and that's crazy because I've seen in the past day since we've talked about this. I've seen the GIF where the Kylo Ren approves GIF where he just puts his thumb up, and I've seen that like 100 times, and I still didn't even think about including that one. But yeah, that one's hilarious.
Yeah, I love that one. Do you have any more?
Oh yeah. There's a couple more that I wanted to mention, throw in here. Back in the late 90s, after Phantom Menace came out, Weird Al Yankovic put out a song. And
I was
this pops up.
Talk about this.
Yeah, this pops up on my Spotify every once in a while because, like I said, if I'm listening to some, like even the bad lip reading, because those are also on Spotify, the audio versions. This one usually pops up next, like right after I listen to anything. But Weird Al did a cover of American Pie.
Yeah,
by Don McLean. But he did this all in the as a parody of Phantom Menace. Yeah, so he did this parody. It's called The Saga Begins. And it's kind of from the it is. It's from the perspective of Obi-Wan, and he kind of just goes through the whole thing. But I can listen to this anytime, and like I love American Pie as a song. It's a great song.
Right.
But this is almost just as good, and it's weird
Yeah,
because
it might
it's a
be
Star
better.
Wars parody. I know, right?
It's great.
Man, I just love this song. I remember after Phantom Menace came out, I would actually listen to this on repeat sometimes.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Downloaded
it's
it from
excellent.
A site that I probably shouldn't mention in public.
Right.
It's probably less than legal.
Probably.
But I used to listen to it on repeat as when I was in high school, when the prequels were at the height of their popularity.
Yeah. I don't think we could talk about Star Wars parodies without mentioning that Weird Al song. So thank you for having that in your list.
Yeah, no problem. And then there's one more for me that I have to mention. When we're talking about Star Wars parodies, if we had this segment and we didn't mention this movie, we would just have to cancel the podcast. But Spaceballs.
Oh yeah, Spaceballs. Yeah, man, that's great.
It might be the best Star Wars parody that we could ever talk about. Mel Brooks movie. If you're not familiar, Mel Brooks movie. It might be on Netflix. I'm not quite sure. I think I've seen it on there before.
I've seen it around somewhere, but we got Dark Helmet, right? And
Dark Helmet, yeah.
The Schwartz.
Yoda. Yogurt and the Schwartz, and
Yogurt.
that's a Mel Brooks character.
Yeah.
Mel Brooks also does some of the now I'm blanking on what they call them, but some of the Imperial characters as well.
I just what I just thought of is when like he's telling them to comb the beach, and they have like these big combs, and they're literally combing the beach. Like, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Tell them to comb the desert, do you hear me? Comb the desert!
Yes, sir.
Sir,
What?
are we being too literal?
No, you fool. We're following orders. We were told to comb the desert, so we're combing it.
Mel Brooks is, if you're watching this, it's not always socially or culturally up to the times. So be aware. Just
keep that in mind.
Try to laugh because some of it's really funny, and it's just like it's just jokes, I guess.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind as you're watching it. It's kind of like Blazing Saddles, where Blazing Saddles gets into some really off-color and not politically correct stuff. But that happens in here as well.
Yeah, yeah. So be aware of that.
And then you have, I always die laughing at the Jawa creatures that they have in there because they do that little song, the ding ding, ding ding,
yeah,
ding, 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 and then they just do that the whole time. But and then again, kind of ribbing at the whole culture of Star Wars with merchandising lines. But probably, like I said, the most well-known Star Wars parody of all time.
Yeah.
So we have to mention Spaceballs.
Yeah, it has to be mentioned.
And if you're listening to the show and you haven't watched it, you got to go find it somewhere. You can find it.
Go check it out.
So.
Yeah, try to check all these out if you can. But this was fun having a little fun with Star Wars, talking about something different, talking about parodies. So thank you, Steve, for giving us this idea.
Yep. And we'll be back next week with some more fan-driven points of view segments. So be looking forward to talking to you next week. You ready to head into the wrap-up?
Yeah, let's wrap it up for this week.
I'm just glad you're here. At the end.
Okay. Thank you again for joining us from a certain point of view. We hope you enjoyed episode 11. Remember to always check out the website. That's FromACertainPointOfView.com, all one word, where we have everything from blog articles to everywhere you can subscribe to the show. By the way, this week we added Stitcher, so you can get the show now on Stitcher, and YouTube is going to be coming soon also. That's something I'm working on here this weekend. And then blog articles, we've had a couple go up this week. I did a Star Wars on a budget article, so if you're kind of looking to jump into some books and comics and even TV and movies, got you some kind of cheaper ways to do that instead of just pouring all your money into this stuff.
Yeah, that was a good one to do. Thanks for doing that, Adam.
Yeah, and then I also kind of took a look at how Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker go hand in hand very well. So,
so another well done article, sir.
I appreciate it. So yeah, check out the website, take a look at those blog articles, and then remember to hit us up on the socials. Twitter is at CertainPOVPod, all one word. So Certain POV and then POD. Facebook, our page is From a Certain Point of View. We also have the Discord server. The link for that will be in the show notes, and it's also on the website as well. And then, like we mentioned earlier, we added email as well. So actually the same as Twitter, Certain POV Pod, and then that's at gmail.com. So again, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate all the support. We really appreciate you listening.
As always, it's been a pleasure talking Star Wars this week with you, Adam, and with anybody that's out there listening. Looking at all the Star Wars news, reviews, and our points of view, which are, having some fan participation was great. And if you're out there listening to us, we really appreciate it. And always remember that the Force will be with you.
Always.